Hi, everyone. I am very glad to see so many people here. Thank you so much for coming to Sarah's big night. I am just popping in to say a quick hello and thanks for being here. And I'm very pleased to pass the mic over to our guest host tonight, the legendary John Toews. So, John, if I can ask you to unmute yourself and jump on in here. I can help you with that too. There you are.
Okay. Hello.
I'll just scoot out of here.
Good. Well, hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us as we celebrate the launch of Sarah N's debut poetry collection, The World is Mostly Sky, published by Turnstone Press. I'd like to begin by acknowledging that although we are coming together from places across the continent, these lands are the traditional territories of many First Peoples. Even within the virtual realm, we are all treaty people with an obligation to work towards reconciliation. So part of that, for me, is to make this acknowledgement. I myself am speaking from Treaty 1 territory, the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe, Cree, Oji-Cree, Dakota, and Dene peoples. Some of our other participants may be found in Treaty 6 territory, the traditional territories of numerous First Nations, including Cree, Dene, Nakota, Saulteaux, and Ojibwe. Both territories also represent the homeland of the Métis Nation. As Lauren mentioned, my name is John Toews, erstwhile event coordinator at McNally Robinson Booksellers, currently in exile. I was quite sorry to miss the opportunity to host this event at the store this month, and so very pleased to be asked to MC this evening. Not only is Sarah a lovely human being, but her work is exceptionally good, something you will discover shortly if you haven't delved in already. So much gratitude is also due naturally to Lauren Carter for all her work organizing the Pandemic Response Reading Series. I'll be letting you know more about its next installment, a literary cocktail event highlighting new poetry collections from U of A Press, later on. I would also like to point out that donations in support of the series and all Lauren's efforts may be made at www.laurencarter.ca/PRRS. Gratitude is also due to our friends at Turnstone Press, not only for publishing work of such high quality, but also for their generous donation of cake. For what is a Turnstone book launch if cake is not involved in some capacity? Given Sarah's documented propensity for throwing cakes on the floor, it might be for the best that there is not an actual physical slab cake present. In just a moment, I'll be introducing tonight's host, Jeanette Lynes. Following her introduction of Sarah N's, there'll be a reading and conversation. And at the close of the conversation, we'll move along to questions from all of you watching. During the evening, as questions occur to you, please do feel free to write them on the Q&A screen, which is accessible via the button just below the screen where you're watching this right now, over to the right. That will allow us to read and respond to your queries more easily than trying to hunt through the chat to find them. But without further ado, let's begin. Your host, Jeanette Lynes, is the author of 7 poetry collections and 2 novels. Her essay, Bat Rain, received the 2009 Constance Rook Prize for Creative Nonfiction. Jeanette directs the MFA in Writing at the University of Saskatchewan. Please put your virtual hands together for Jeanette Lynes.
Hi, everyone. I hope everyone can hear me and see me okay. I'm just so happy to be here tonight for the Pandemic Response Reading Series. And what a great night in which we celebrate Sarah N's wonderful new collection, The World is Mostly Sky. I'm so honored to be able to have this conversation with Sarah and be here with all of you from so many places. And Sarah, I have a daisy for you. I have flowers for your book launch, and I will give these to you through the Zoom sphere. It's a real honor for me to be here with you all tonight. And right now, boy, do we ever need poetry. So we're going to get right into it. And I'm not going to say a whole lot more, but I'm going to introduce Sarah and then just say a little bit about the format for this evening. Sarah Enns grew up on Treaty 1 territory in the small town of Landmark, Manitoba, and currently lives in Treaty 6 territory. Her poetry has appeared in a number of literary journals, including Prairie Fire, Arc, CV2, Poetry is Dead, and Room Magazine. In 2019, she won the Edna Stabler Personal Essay Contest from the New Quarterly, and in 2018, she placed first in Room Magazine's Short Forms Contest. She holds a BA from the University of British Columbia's Creative Writing Program and is a current MFA in Writing candidate at the University of Saskatchewan. And The World is Most Sky is Sarah's first book. And I also have the great joy to have Sarah as a student, and she's just an amazing writer, and as John mentioned, a really, really, really awesome human being. So I'm going to say a little bit about how we'll proceed, and we're going to have Sarah reading from her new collection, and that's mostly what you guys want to hear. So Sarah will read a couple of poems, and then we'll have a bit of a conversation about that, and then a couple of more, a second set, and a bit of conversation, and then a third group, a couple more poems, and a little bit more conversation, and then we will have questions from all of you. And John will tell everyone at the end how they can buy Sarah's book, because you will really want to run out and get Sarah's book. The World is Mostly Sky is a wonderful book, and there's so many things I admire about it. The beautiful, clean, spare lyric poems that are still rich with story. It's such a nimble collection. There's such a range of forms. There's prose poems, there's visual poems. It's just terrifically dynamic, and just so much fun to read, and incredible emotional range as well. You know, I won't give you too many more spoilers, but there's edgy material, there's elegiac material, there's apocalyptic material, and there's some really, really, really funny material. I think a bit of which you're going to get a sampler from this evening. So without further ado then, I'll ask Sarah to read from the first section of the book. I think she'll read from, and then we'll chat about that for a couple of moments and just keep moving through in that way. Sarah, congratulations to you.
Thank you so much. Thank you for that introduction. It was so beautiful. Thank you, Jeanette. Okay, so I'm going to read from the first section first, as Jeanette said. So the first poem I'm going to read is called Silos. That summer, we wore too much black and sat on the heaters in the hall, stood in fields with boys named Jake and Brett and Cole, invited them to our parties. We lay on trampolines sucking ice pops, plastic wrappers sticky across our cheeks, ran up piles of gravel with Slurpee straws in our mouths, slid all the way down in dust. The small stones rubbed our hands soft. At summer's end, I put my arms in your coat and felt us turn to memory, how we screamed into silos over and over, our own echo startling, old, tender as stars. How I wrote lyrics on your jeans, pressed in thumb ink heartbeats. How you rubbed holes in the knees. How is the,
Thank
can
you
you
so much.
hearing and seeing okay? Is it working?
Yes.
Okay, good. Awesome. Okay.
I see lots of virtual applause.
Okay,
Yeah,
awesome.
that's great.
Perfect. Okay. Now I'm going to read a poem called Age Apocalypse. When I was 16, this boy wanted me to climb a silo on his farm, swing up metal rungs so we could see our whole town down there below. But I never did, and never climbed the feed mill either. These my prairie strongholds, these skylines I thought would stay. I climbed instead the bell tower of that church in Piney, my friends and I scrambling the decaying steps stretched to steeple, so we could see the fire we'd followed, its hum of smoke haunting some farmer's field or old forest, I don't know, and it was too far to touch us anyway. This slow-moving splinter, its brief opening, and us laughing the way you do when it's always been the end of the world. That one's the apocalypse tinged one. Okay, and then the last one from this section that I'll read is called Each September We Went to See the Geese. And this was before condos built up all around my hometown, back when the neighbor boy had a secret. He said, I'll tell you when the birds land, because like magic, they know to fly and fall together, feather the sky and call hollow into a dusk dying to frost. This was when I believed in secrets, in that last hunching in cool grass, before pushing on slightly from summer, when anything might happen, so small beneath pressing bodies full of air, come suddenly down onto the lake. Thank you.
Oh, that was that was beautiful, Sarah. Thank you so much. And yeah, I have maybe about 3 questions to pick your brain about. Just love those poems, and I guess this question could apply to a number of the poems, but certainly to Silos. I love that moment in Silos. It's so poignant. I put my arms in your coat and felt us turn to memory. It's really, really very poignant. And I wondered if you would like to comment on the role of memory in these poems, because it's certainly it's there a lot in many of the poems.
Yeah, I think in some ways I was thinking about the writing of this collection, and I almost felt like some of the memories that I'm working through in this collection, I felt like I had to kind of express them in order to kind of either understand them or process them or just even write about anything else. I felt like I was very fixated on these kind of particular big moments of that created important memories. And so I think that's what this collection is a lot of, is kind of trying to look back and try to understand, like, why do those memories loom so large for me, and how can I kind of capture them and express them. So yeah,
thank you. They feel very distilled though too, like it's, you know, there could be this sort of rush of memory and it can get nostalgic and sentimental, but it never feels that way. They're very sharp, they're very distilled, they're almost kind of pictorial, you know. I see a lot of these poems almost as a film in the landscape in my head, a movie playing in my head. The landscapes are so evocative. So I did notice too, Sarah, in Silos, what a great images, you know, of screaming into silos, and there seem to be, you know, some motifs of like a lot of mouths in a lot of the poems, and you know, screaming and giving voice, and ice pops and Slurpees, of course, are markers of very particular time period for you. And I started to think, Silos, that might be a poem about becoming a writer. I don't know. I mean, I just started noticing a lot of images of vocality and especially like mouths, I guess, and speaking and naming. And I wondered if you wanted to riff off of that at all.
Yeah, I would love to. I'm glad that you noted that. I think Silos in particular is also this experience of like really making yourself known and like really like in a vocal way and being like noisy just to hear what you sound like. And I think that does kind of translate into what being a poet is too, in a lot of ways too, is like saying something just to see like what does that sound like? What do I mean when I say those things? What happens when I speak those things out? And yeah, like what happens when I say those stories and express those memories? So I think that is that's a good reading of the book. I think that there's a reason why I'm kind of obsessed with this idea of screaming and talking and teeth.
Right, yeah. And a silo is also a very, it's a very, and that's such a beautiful visual element on the page too. And a silo is very contained kind of space as well. Like in a way, maybe that a poem is a container. And of course, you're such evocative poet of place and of prairie place. And one of the little banners that went across when you were reading, I loved it. Someone said, "Woohoo, piney!" So your readers are obviously, you know, connecting to the strong sense of place in these poems. And I know in Age Apocalypse, which is I felt very strongly such a kind of very prairie poem, and all those cool images of perspective and scale and moving up close to things and back far from things and looking at things from above, and kind of sadness too of the kind of the disappearing landscapes in the so Manitoba. Good. I'm really getting into these little banners going across, but this sort of elegiac sense of disappearing landscapes, prairie strongholds, these skylines, I thought would stay, and we see that the ecological thread is strong in your work, and that's is that I guess sort of an odd question. Is that a kind of it's always on your mind as a conscious theme, or is that just kind of how you're what your poetics is so grounded? And I know what you've been writing in your MFA as well. Your poetics is so grounded in the earth and in place and Manitoba. And here's my question, being a Manitoba writer, I wondered if you wanted to talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, I would love to. I think I honestly think I would really struggle to write poems that are not in some way about like canola fields or a big sky or a silo. I think growing up in that environment, it feeds into the ways that I've been able to construct metaphor, and the way that it's like the landscape that I map my emotions onto in some ways. So it helps me to kind of, I don't know, it's the space that I draw on, I guess, to try to evoke those feelings. And then I also think, so both Age Apocalypse and the other poem I read about the geese are both kind of immersed in this memory of what the landscape was, and then this feeling of it changing and being out of my control, that change, and worrying about what's going to happen to the geese. and now now when you drive to my small town, there are condos up everywhere around where it used to be fields, and so I think that is a preoccupation that even when I go back to mine these memories, that are still kind of haunting, it always is, it comes across with this fear that the place that I grew up in is so rapidly changing and being industrialized. And so it's hard not to write about that.
Yeah, thank you. And your imagery is so precise and beautiful, and so drawn, from earth and from sky and from those canola fields. There are lots of people in your poems as well. So my next question, before we hear some more of the work, is like lots and lots of people in your poems. The neighbor boy with his secret, and in one poem, and I love the poems about women's friendship in this collection. And is that kind of not awkward necessarily, but do your friends know they're in your poems?
Yeah, so I think for the most part, I don't know if I ever showed the neighbor boy. His mom is here. If I ever showed him.
She's probably going to write something across that banner any minute now.
But
Sorry, Sarah.
But I think I think that's another thing that I couldn't really help, was like this feeling of these relationships and these people are so important to me and the way that I experience things, and it just felt the truest way to express my experiences were kind of always through this relational sort of method. And so yeah, and I did, whenever I named someone in a poem, I let them know first. And for the, well, actually across the board, they were all happy to be named. So I'm happy about that too. I don't think I would ever want to to name in a negative way. So yeah. So I'm hoping that whenever I'm talking about these people in this community, that it's in a way that is celebratory. Yeah.
Yes. Oh, I felt a great amount of love in the poems for these individuals. Maybe not the exes, but wait, they might be out there. I'm not going to say anything more. I'm going to ask you about Anne Carson instead. So you have your epigraph from Anne Carson, and I wondered before we move into the second group, whether you wanted to say a little bit about why that's important to you, or other poets, other influences. The old poetic influence question.
Absolutely, yeah, I would love to talk about that. I think so I chose the epigraph from Anne Carson for the poem Wuthering, particularly because it's from the Glass Essay, which is a meditation on Emily Bronte, and Anne Carson is out on the moors, and she's kind of in an emotional wuthering space. So as soon as I read the Glass Essay, I just thought, oh, that's actually perfect. That like really encapsulates sort of that particular feeling, which I think Anne Carson does just like so well. I don't know how she so perfectly nails exactly what she wants to say, but it's amazing. But then the other two, I would say, big influences for me with this book were Di Brandt, of course, always. She, I think, was the first poet that really made me feel super excited about poetry, and also was speaking that kind of Mennonite girl language that I think I needed. And then also the Weaker Thans and John K. Sampson and his lyrics, I think, which is also very Winnipeg based, right? So all of those Winnipeg images, I also just latched onto in a big way. So I think that you can find those influences throughout the book as well. Yeah. Should I read Wuthering now?
I would love if you read Wuthering.
Perfect. Okay, so yeah, so the poem is called Wuthering, A Comprehensive Guide, and the Wuthering comes from, of course, Wuthering Heights, one of my favorite novels, but then also the Kate Bush song Wuthering Heights, which is also one of my favorite songs and music videos. So that's just the background on that. And the epigraph is from Anne Carson. It goes, I felt as if the sky was torn off my life. 1. You found the body on the moor, a wind-swept broken thing. You found the body mid-dive, trying for lake. You somehow knowing the body, like promises earthy, stretched along straight lines of dirt, where its greenness might turn good. The body lets you think you found it yourself. 2. The body believes it could watch you talk about roots, prairie grass, seed security all day, and in that way the body does not think love is an impossibility. The body burns red in triangles, maps circles from your collarbone to your chest, pokes breath to your inner ear, seeks sun, craves water, and also you. The body unfurls. 3. The whole city is coming apart, but quiet. The body is interested in quietness. At the bar, a band plays, so the body leans into you and likes the feeling, flannel at its neck. The body slowly bends, puts its ear between your feet, and you guard it, a blackbird with its egg. Later, in your car, parked up the scarp, the body looks to see sky, a sheet, dissolving, yellow, black, electric. The body's hush. 4. The body swells an idea, moving west, growing in the rain, building real muscle. At the same time, the body is filling its apartment with plants and pets and becoming attracted to ways of generating home knowledge. You tell the body you are trying to see the tree so that you might describe it. The body says, in my dream, I am out on the moor and you are smashing your forehead against the bark of an ash. 5. You went north instead of coming back to the body, so the body creeps out to the moon to commune. The body does not want to tell anyone about your deep distance, the way you ask or don't, while it falls out of itself, how the world drops serious and fierce, bizarrely bright from the sky. The body rotates a galaxy. 6. Sodden, satisfied, you return, take the body, push its palms up under your shirt. You say, I am now safe. But the body narrows against the window, folds over the kitchen sink, rubbing small ceramic cups, old church mugs after midnight, the curtains worn blue and floating back and forth like whispers. The body squints. A ghost cycles in the garden. 7. The body becomes direct about its desires. Your fingers, the body says, dipping into and out of the lake. Your sun-hot neck touched gently. The huge and heavy silence, the inevitable sinking, the strange bird, the water stirring, then stilled, up on the rocks, and the body. 8. You bring morning coffee, cross the street with white paper cups, your apology, an omen. From the balcony, the body rattles the rusted metal railing, anticipates the air change, smells thunder, and then the body battens down. 9. In the field, pink clover, golden aster, purple dropseed, harebell. The wind here hurtles to horizon, so the body lies low, the soil and the body outstretched, forsaken, absolved. The body slips free a blade, nibbles the long root. 10. Finally, the body feels its way to a house out of the wind. There, the body learns to dance whole routines, cook soups and stews, sleep soundly. The body recalls the moor and thinks of you fondly or not at all. The body has set certain blocks and other bodies no longer scare it. People laugh when the body begins to read and tell stories. They sit at the body's feet, which, each night, trace soil up the stairs.
Wow. Thank you so much. And before I hear the poem that I requested, after I could maybe ask you a couple of things, Sarah, about Wuthering. That is amazing. That is an amazing piece. And I happen to know that your MFA in writing thesis is a long poem, a book-length poem, and I could really see that the seeds of that in The World Is Mostly Sky, where there's this building and building with some of the pieces, and they're going to bust out and become a long poem.
Yeah.
So how do you? At what point did you know that this is? I love that piece because it's so granular. But yet it's so big. It's got this. It's very haunting and mystical, and I don't know if I dared to say prairie gothic or not. No, maybe not. But what labels are labels, right? But I'm probably gonna get some thumbs down banners up there. But seriously, how do you know? Like, how do you peg it down and yet have such a big canvas at the same time? I mean, when did you think, I think this is maybe going to be and very cinematic, like little moments, really, really wonderful piece. You want to say anything about the craft side of us writing a sequence poem like that?
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, I think it's something that I loved learning more about when trying to write a long poem in my MFA. That was a fun, exciting thing, because I love the form. I love long poems. So I've always wanted to write one. And then I think what it is that I do like the really small detail and the really specific little scene. And then I like the idea of accumulation, of accumulating a bunch of those little scenes, so that by the time you get to the end, there is this kind of broad paintbrush that's happened from all these little spots of paint, I guess. So I think that's what draws me to the long poem form, is like getting to be so focused and say things in such a small way, because you do get to still expand it out as much breathing room as the poem needs. Mm-hmm. So I think that's what this series kind of taught me about. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And your work's like much poetry, your work's also very visual. So those sections in Wuthering have a beautiful kind of collage feeling, kind of floating, and it's not necessarily linear, or perhaps could even be read in different ways. So that's really wonderful. I don't know how you do it. I wanted to ask you too, Sarah, about some of these poems are just crazy funny. And I know humor can be difficult to talk about how to write it, because it's not necessarily, you achieve it in a number of ways, I think, but I think it would be great to hear. There's lots of great humor through your collection, but how about some Marilyn Monroe?
That sounds great. Yeah.
That was
So
my request. And I started cheating because I've heard you read it before at the River Volta reading series in Saskatoon, and you just had us all in stitches.
Well, thank you so much. I think that writing, if you can write a poem that's a little bit funny, I feel like that is like a really nice, it's almost safe feeling as a poet too. In some ways, it helps to say things. If you're going to say it a little bit with humor. I think that makes it feel a little bit more comfortable sometimes. So this is my Marilyn Monroe poem. It has a lot of Marilyn Monroe quotes from her movies, which if you're reading, I've put them in italics, but just listening, I think you'll just be able to tell when I flip into a Marilyn Monroe line and when it's me. But yeah, this is also one of those X's poems. So it's called, and the title comes from a line from the movie The Misfits. You could blow up the whole world and end up feeling sorry for yourself. I've been obsessing over Marilyn Monroe, and I think I might be in love with her, me and everyone else. I've been having stress dreams about my ex-lovers. They keep sitting next to me wearing too many hats. Sometimes we're in a church, sometimes we're in a park, sometimes we're in a bar. It's me, don't you remember? The tomato from upstairs. I am trying to memorize one good Marilyn monologue, but I just can't do the voice. Sometimes I fantasize about my ex-lovers dying. It is because they seem happy and I seem unhappy, but it's not that I want them to be dead so much as I want them to be sad and bald. After Marilyn died, Arthur Miller said he wouldn't go to her funeral because she won't be there, and that made me weep. Walking down Portage, drinking McDonald's coffee. I don't have murder in me, probably. I'm learning to sit still with what is in me and forgive myself for it. How do you find your way back in the dark? Just yesterday, I shared a beer with one ex-lover. Well, he told me his story, and also that he is trying to think of a reason for doing everything that he is doing, which I couldn't relate to. I'm trying to be less dramatic, but I also want everyone to pay attention to me as though I am having a crisis, which I am not. So you pull yourself together, you go on to the next job, the next saxophone player. The newest experiment of my life is that I'm trying to only wash my hair once a week, and the cycle of grease and self-denial has been extremely affirming. While I take my bath and do not wash my hair, I practice monologues for the two cats watching from the mat. A stairway to nowhere. I think that's just elegant. And I don't hate Arthur Miller at all, which I realize makes me part of the problem. I used to think I would be the sort of person who would attract love very easily, but I'm coming to grips with the fact that there aren't really reasons for very many things, though maybe that's what I'm running away from when, sitting beside my ex, our knees touch, just once, under the table. I can tell you one thing. It's not going to happen to me again. Ever.
Yay, thank you, Sarah.
Thank you.
That's so great. And are there might be writers out there who are, do you have tips for writing humor?
Ooh, I don't know. I think sometimes in this poem, I think it really was about being super honest. Maybe more honest than you might be comfortable saying in normal life. But I think it's like, it's the honesty, but then also the kind of the shock of the honesty, I think sometimes.
Yeah, and I think that I love how you've done this. It's the sort of the way you've done the juxtapositions as well, like the oddity of what follows after what else, you know. Yeah, you're getting a big time kudos over the little banners on that one. Yeah. So I think moving into the third section, Sarah, we'd love to hear. I think you've got maybe 3 poems from this the third section of the collection. So I'll turn it back to you, and thank you for your great responses.
Thank you. Yeah. Okay. So I'm gonna read Broken Seals All Summer then. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So okay. Yeah. So this poem is called Broken Seals All Summer. By glass, I'm impossibly close. Try to read something in the glazed female face. 7 gorillas in all. A sign says, survival breeding plan. The crowd looks and laughs. 7, a reference to creation, recite my friends, returned with red palms. They'll live at least to 70, so long as they get real on health. I am interested in healing, but the world's beyond it. The spectacular rotation found even in the spirals of our thumbs. We scroll images of Orca heaving her baby's corpse above waves. 17 days awake, take us, take up us. How to honor this looming knowing. Offer evocation of wholeness. 7. Dance ocean proverb to dust, spit, bacteria growing legs to stand on. Shifting DNA's extravagant in despair. From our porch, worms drip sticky thread. The canopy infested, elms stretched white and ragged. I see a circus, squirming satellites. A womb collecting membranes, delicate with dignity, pearled to tightly knitted bones. We text our bloom, free bleeding, save seed, crystal clutch. Of course, preserves won't keep horizon from shrapnel in the haze. Light and dark, water from water, the gathering of earth, seasons and stars, then moving creatures and beasts. Our image, I hear it coming.
Thank you.
Thank you. That one dips its toe into the apocalyptic pool again.
For sure.
Yeah. Okay, I just have 2 more. One is a short little one called Powerful Millennials on the California Freeway. Got lost pointing to huge white wind turbines and outlet malls. Laura, missing him, said she'd love a song like Springsteen. So when the radio started dancing in the dark, we screamed, slammed the horn, and careened through strange desert sand, ridiculous brushy palms. Rolled down the borrowed car top, something happening somewhere. What else might we invoke, waving iced coffees to the sun?
Lovely.
Thank you. And this is the last poem for the night, and then also it's the last poem of the book, so that seemed fitting. And it's called Grainy to Froth, Red to Burst. I cried on the phone to Wendy as I walked down Wolseley, 18 gardening hippie dads averting their eyes. One of those first hot spring days, hands noodling the sidewalk, bird crescendos lifting the petaled planet green and wet from winter's womb, and me, wanting to die. Wendy remembered the time we took the bus to Seattle in February, stood in the wind at the pier, our necks twisted up to see all that gray ocean heaving itself into concrete, collapsing, grainy to froth. The curdled earth, she cooed, returns with an onslaught of rot. I was staring at a particular tulip, bathing above the mulch in sweetest 10 a.m. sun, beaming, red to burst. Gasped into the phone, unzipped my fleece. Wendy, I said, ducking my head, flower blurred between blinks. I am going to eat up. Brushed my nose against small seeds, rouged my cheek, kissed then tore, pollen tender between the rubber of gums, giggling pigment. Yes, that's what I'll do. I'll eat this whole world up.
Thank you, Sarah. And that does feel like the perfect, it's always hard to know not just how to end a poem, you know, the old poem never finished but abandoned, but just to end collection. And I can't think of anything more perfect and more affirming. And again, this idea of giving voice, right? And we want to hear so much more of your voice as a poet. You're just such an amazing poet, and it's wonderful to have you, and privilege to have you in the MFA in writing for all of us. What you bring to us, and I'm going to say congratulations again to you, Sarah. And I'm going to read this book, I think, over many, many times, and I know others will as well. And this book is going to have legs. I'm certain of that. And at this point, I'm also going to turn the proceedings back, and I believe the questions will be fielded by John. I think again. Are we going back to John now?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, because I think probably the people have lots of questions. So I just want to say thank you to Sarah and John and Lauren. How fun to work with you, and what a treat this has been at this time and in this very strange moment we're in. So it's just thank you for this gift of this book, Sarah.
Well, thank you, and maybe I'll do my thank yous now before doing the Q&A too, because I have so many people that I would love to say thank you to, starting with Jeanette. Thank you so much for being here. It is, I think it is truly the dream to have your work read and talked about by Jeanette Lynes. So I'm so grateful that you're here. Thank you for taking the time. Thank you also to John for hosting this event. I think when I think of a book launch, I think of John Toews hosting it. So this really makes it real. So thank you so much, John. And then thank you also to Lauren for putting together this amazing reading series. It's so helpful to writers like me who are just launching this spring. But I also know it takes so much hard work and time. So I'm very, very grateful and appreciative. And then I also want to say thank you to Jennifer Still and Sherry Benning and Sandra Ridley and Ria Tregeboff, who are just four extraordinary writers who have also been very important poet mentors to me. So thank you so much for that. And then thank you to Turnstone. I think the best way to learn how to write a poem is probably copy editing full-time collecting poetry. I think I learned just an unbelievable amount when I was working at Turnstone as an editorial assistant, and I'm so grateful for that experience. And now, thank you for making this book with me. Thank you to Melissa for copy editing and for the beautiful cover design. Should I do that? Maybe I should hold it up. I forgot to do this at the beginning.
It's gorgeous.
Yeah, that was Melissa McIver. And thank you to Jameis for answering my frantic phone calls and for being so supportive. And thank you for Sharon, who was an incredible editor and really guided me through this whole process. And then finally, thank you everyone who's here right now. I so appreciate it. It means a lot to see so many people and to see all your chats and everything. It's just amazing. And thank you especially to my friends and family who helped me work through these poems, both on the page, helping me revise them, but also lived with me through the events of these poems. Thank you. I'm just unbelievably grateful.
I'm presuming I'm not popping in as an interloper now, but I will start the questions. And thank you so much for your kind words. It's very humbling, and I'm just delighted to be a part of this launch this evening. So our first question is from Cheryl Sadowski, who asks, how much does young love lost figure into your work? And if so, how hard is that to write about?
Ooh, that's a good question. I would say the experience, those first heartbreaks, those first real heartbreaks, and first experiences losing love, I would say were pretty formative experiences for me, just both in kind of understanding myself and understanding what love can look like, and also various ways that sort of trauma or unhealthy behaviors can factor into some of those first relationships when neither of you really knows yet how to do it well. So I think that it does loom large in my work. yeah, I think that it does take on a particularly that middle section of the book. I think it is a driving force in that piece, trying to work through some of those feelings. I can't remember the second part of the question.
And if so, how hard is that to write about?
I feel like it would honestly be harder to not write about it. I feel like I have to, like, that's the only way to survive it, I think, is for me to write a very sad poem about it. So yeah.
Perfect. And so Cheryl also had a follow-up observation where she mentioned loves and landscapes lost, the through line for so much writing. So not a question, just an observation. Connie Cartledge was looking for a little bit of gossip and was wondering, did you change anyone's name in the poems?
You know, I didn't. Which again, I have to say thank you to my very dear friends and family who are just more than happy to be named. Yeah, so yeah, so it is their names. Yeah.
All right, and I will remind everybody, if you do have a question, feel free to just pop it in the Q&A box just to the side. Our next question is, how do you know when a special moment is worthy of becoming a poem?
Oh, that's a good question. I think those moments tend to haunt me, and that's why. I think it's because there's something about them that I can't shake, you know? And then also sometimes when I'm trying to write about a specific feeling, then sometimes the most useful way to get at a specific feeling is to go back and think of an experience that might have kind of revolved around that feeling. So I think it's either one of the two. Either the moment won't leave me alone, and so I need to write about it, or it works really well to kind of encapsulate a certain emotion, I think.
Fantastic, thanks. And that was from Brigitte de Pop, whose name I hope I'm pronouncing correctly, who also mentioned that she loves your poems, Sarah.
Thank you for that.
Tanis McDonald just asked a question. What does it mean for you to write about place and, just to complicate it, to write about class, as it influences how you think about place as you write?
That's complicated. I think that's the thing, is whenever you're writing about place, you're also, there's no such thing as writing about a place in completion. You're always writing about it from your particular experience of that place and your particular standpoint. So let me just read the question again. So yeah, I think that all I can really do is try to express how I've experienced place from my particular sort of well of experiences and my particular standpoint. And then where possible, try to acknowledge where, you know, various privileges may be. So whether that's class or race or whatever it is, the ways in which that affects how I walk around in that place, obviously. So I think that those are all really important considerations.
Karen Enns was wondering what your favorite poem is in the book.
Oh, that's a good question. I have a couple that I really like. The one that's my favorite right now, because I think it sometimes changes. Right now, one of my favorites is Communion, which is a prose poem that really is about my pals. Importance of sisterhood and community and female friendship, and it's about sitting on the kitchen floor drinking wine. So yeah.
Angeline Schellenberg noticed that in the acknowledgements you thank Jennifer Still for showing you where to look for a poem. Can you say more about that, and where are some places you looked because of her influence?
Ooh, yeah, so I mean, I think Jennifer Still is just incredible at doing that, at experiencing the world in a really tactile, sort of slowed down way, where you can really see the minute details. And I think that's just pointing me to, like, what is the light doing in this scene, or what you know, where's the dust? She was saying that she felt the collection was really granular. There was lots of sand and dust, and so just paying attention to all of those you know, different elements, I think is one of her many skills. Yeah.
Joel Peters says that he loved the evening, great poems, great reading. Which sentence or poem did you struggle with the most to find the right words? And how did you work through that struggle? Do you have a trusted method?
Ooh, that's a great question. I don't know if I have a trusted method. Sometimes my method is to call my poet friends and have them help me. I think sometimes I'll be like, okay, this is the line with the comma, this is the line without the comma, what's better? And they'll be like, I don't. But so that's one method. I would say in this collection, one of the ones that I really worked on hard was that weathering section, especially the ending, finding the right sort of note to hit. I think that's another thing about a series or a long poem, is that you're kind of hitting all of these notes, and so you want it to make a resonant chord. But so you really want that last note especially to ring well throughout. And so that one I actually finished when I was at Sage Hill, that excellent writing retreat, and I was working with Sandra Ridley, and I was lying in a graveyard of monks. I let them tell me what to say. I don't know if that's a trusted method, but
I'm actually going to selfishly interject and just ask a question based on that, because it kind of dovetails out of it.
Right.
I was really intrigued by the placement of the Marilyn Monroe poem immediately following the Wuthering Heights sequence. And also my mind immediately began thinking of people whose experiences are kind of mediated through others, like Monroe with Arthur Miller, and like obviously Wuthering Heights. I was just wondering if you could speak to the placement and the contrast between the two poems in the book.
Yeah, so I think that middle section, it has a lot of other influences. I talk about Hitchcock at one point. There are a lot of sort of dreamy allusions that are made, and I think what I wanted to do too was I wanted to do, Jeanette actually said this to me the other day in a kind of lovely way, which was that it's like when a band is playing a musical set and it's kind of a slow, important song, and then it flips into something a little bit more like rock and roll. so I wanted it to have that kind of mood shift, I think, to kind of lighten the mood a little bit. That was the purpose.
Well, it works very effectively in that regard. Sarah Christy Lone says, love Sarah's beautiful poems, a gift for the soul. Sarah, do you have poems that you prefer to read out loud versus to have read? Are there visual elements that are lost when you read out loud? She mentions that there were lots of beautiful formats in your poems, and wondered how you capture the formats in the spoken word form.
That is a really cool question, because one of those is, I don't know if you can see, Broken Seals All Summer, which I read, is kind of formatted to look like DNA strands. I don't know if anyone would pick up on that, but it's supposed to kind of be this spiraling, this like very about our evolution as humans and the world's evolution. So I do think that some of the poems, or some of them that are letters, kind of, that I think it helps to have the visual placement to kind of guide you through. So there are a few of them that I think it's more, you might get more out of reading it and seeing it visually. But I love reading the Marilyn poem out loud, because I think that there's also something that injecting voice and breath sometimes into poems also can kind of give it an extra boost of energy. So that's one of the ones that I really like reading out loud. In the first section, I have this poem called Flora Culture, which I was nervous about reading out loud. Because it has kind of two voices going on at the same time, and I wasn't sure how to present that in speaking. But I think I just paused in between the voices. That was my strategy to try to get that across. Yeah.
The inimitable Dennis Cooley says, wonderful reading, Sarah. How does your sense of audience figure in your writing, in your public reading of your work?
That is also a very good question, because I think that is something, I think when I was writing this book, I was thinking a lot about my friends who are the same age as me and who have gone through a lot of the same things. And I think I was writing towards like that sort of audience, and or maybe like a version of me who was younger and who maybe could have benefited from hearing some of these poems. And so that was kind of where the collection went. And then all of a sudden to have kind of just everyone read it, or lots of people read it, hopefully, is kind of a terrifying feeling, that is in some ways kind of exhilarating, and in other ways, you know, I don't know, a little bit frightening. So it does factor into, I think, my public readings. I think I only read the ones that I would feel, you know, comfortable and confident reading out loud.
Janine Blanchette asks, how difficult was it to title the book? It's such a perfect summing up of your beautiful poetry.
Thank you, Janine. That, so the title came from a line in a poem, and that again was, Jennifer Still pointed at that line and was like, maybe this one. And I was like, yeah, I think that's right. So that's another example of Jennifer Still knowing where to look.
So Stephen Davis asks, Sarah, do you write your poetry with pen and paper first? If so, does the formatting of your poems tend to change at all as you transition from one medium to another?
Ooh, that's a cool question too. I definitely always start with pen and paper. Yep, I can't create on a blank screen. I think there's something terrifying about that. Whereas like a pen and paper, it feels more free. I don't know, psychological. So yeah, I always start with pen and paper. And then when I move it into I usually don't worry about stanza breaks either, or even line breaks when I'm writing it down on paper. And it's not until I move it onto the computer that I really start to think about how I want these lines to sit. Yeah, so yeah, it comes after.
That's really interesting. Sarah Christie Lone, as many others in the chat likely is already eager for more work and was wondering, will your MFA thesis be published as your second book?
That's the dream. Yeah. So it is, the idea is that I will defend it in the fall, and then after that it will be a publishable manuscript. It's a long poem all about the tallgrass prairie and my Oma. So yeah.
Joanna Lilly was wondering if there's an audiobook on the way.
There is. I just have to get better at soundproofing my apartment. That's the only thing. Jima suggested building a blanket fort, so that might be what I do.
Angeline Schellenberg asks, were there any poems you hadn't planned to include, but inserted in the collection late in the editing process? And if so, which ones and why?
That's a good question too. Yes, especially towards the end, the last section. It was kind of interesting. I found that the first section, it was actually a lot of pulling out. I had lots, and then it was like, okay, maybe not all of these should be in here. So it was pulling out from the first section, and then I think the last section, it was more about filling in what holes there still are. And so, for example, I think Astronomical was one of the later ones that I added. That one I wrote completely at Sage Hill. Yeah, and a lot of these ones, Communion actually was another newer one. So yeah, I would say from the last section there were, and I think those ones maybe just are more reflective of me trying to, I think I knew what that section was, I wanted it to be about. I wanted it to be about sisterhood and community, and it wasn't until I sort of had to make sure that the section was about that, I realized that there were some poems that needed to be added. Yeah.
Right. Well, I believe we've reached the end of the questions that we have. I'll give everybody an opportunity if there is another question or two. If anybody would like to offer them, they're welcome to. Otherwise, Karen N suggests that you start recording your audiobook at 3 a.m. and then you'll avoid any sound.
Yeah, that's a thought. That's a good idea.
All right.
I love the chat function. Thank you so much for everyone who's been commenting away. It makes it feel very, it makes me feel like you're all here, which is really lovely.
Oh, Rebecca Montgomery asks what advice you would have for future poets.
Ooh. I think try to become a editorial assistant at Turnstone Press and copy edit a lot of poems. No, but by that I mean I think like read a lot of poems. Read as many poems as you can and learn from, and identify what you like, and then try to do that. that's my advice.
Well, it seems like we've come to the natural end of the question period. So I wasn't sure if there was anything else at all you might like to say, Sarah, or if you have any dramatic closing words.
Oh, throw a cake on the floor or something. Yeah, I'm so thankful. Just again, thank you everyone for coming to this. Thank you for talking so much in the chat and for participating in the Q&A. I really, really appreciate that.
Well, thank you so much, Sarah, and thank you particularly for your beautiful book, which is right here, once again, highly recommended. It is certainly a book you'll be returning to multiple times once you've actually read through. It's available from all local independent booksellers. There are copies at McNally Robinson here in Winnipeg, McNally Robinson in Saskatoon. So please do go and track down a copy of the book if you haven't already. It is really wonderful and well worth reading. I'd like to thank once again Sarah, of course, for her work, Jeanette Lynes for her incredible hosting of the evening, Lauren for all of her work putting the evening together. Please join us again on Thursday, May 14th at 6 p.m. Central, 5 p.m. Mountain Time, where the University of Alberta Press invites you to literary cocktails. It'll be readings of their most recent poetry titles featuring writers from coast to coast, including, as my mouse scrolls down, E. Alex Pierce, whose most recent collection is To Float, To Drown, To Close Up, To Open, Winnipeg's own Angeline Schellenberg, hello Angeline, and her new collection Fields of Light and Stone, Kat Cameron's author of Ghosts Still Linger, and Valerie Mason-John, author of I Am Still Your Negro. But closing off the evening once again, thank you all so very much for joining us. It's lovely just to see your names on the side and to have had all of your comments and questions. It's just been a really excellent evening. So thank you again. Thank you to Sarah, to Jeanette, to Lauren, and to Turnstone Press. Have a wonderful evening, everyone.
What should we do? Do you want to read one, Sarah?
I mean, I'm happy to if people want it, then sure.
Do it. Yeah. You have a critical mass of people screaming for an encore.
Yes. Yeah, you do, Sarah.
There's like 40 people still here.
Everybody's home, Sarah.
Yeah.
I should have dramatically seen Sarah's screen.
Yeah.
Watch to the end of like a movie and then they show you like a preview of the next movie, you know?
Yeah. They waited till the end of the credits. Exactly.
Well, maybe I will read the poem Cats, definitely, because I do love cats. So maybe I'll read Cats, definitely. It's also from that second section, so it's another kind of heartbreak loss poem. Cats, definitely. In the glow of my touch screen, he sends results from the allergy test, bumps up and down his forearm. Horses, grass, cats, definitely. I text, sailors at sea kept cats to ward away evil, ensure a safe return. And one night in spring, he coaxes me onto the handlebars of his bicycle, where I taste salt, pollen, see myself for a second as the figurehead, weeping. I'm certain he'll spill me into the street, but he laughs, because nothing that bad has ever happened to you. And when he leaves, he lint rolls his shirt sleeves, collects the party balloons I blew, abandons the welcome home banner. I wish him nausea when cycling, and my bike breaks the next week. I find balloon shards under the couch where my cat hid them, our remains colorful if deflated. My cat takes care of me, knocks the top of her head into my wrists while I'm reading, bites my naked feet to swell the skin. And I like this idea of welts, spells, of somehow saving my starboard side.
Beautiful.
Oh, good. I love the cat poem.
Thank you.